Let's now take a look at creating a transition statement for one of our children. I've selected Adam, and if I select Adam's transition tab, it gives me access to the pages of the transition statement. Now if you flick through each of the pages, you can see the various fields and information that end up being on the printed transition statement. So let's start with the cover page. Much of the information is pre-filled, and this comes from the student information from the database. You can edit any of this information or add any required pieces that are missing. If we hit the Save Next button, it takes us to Part 2. Now this is where we put in the context and things that might help the child settle into school. Now you can write these in individually per child, but for things like the context, you may wish to enter one generic piece of information and push that out to each child's transition statement. Now you do that in Settings. So if you go to Settings, School Centre, and page 2, here you have access to some fields where you can put in generic information that you can push out to each child's record. So the one that is most generic is the context. Things that might help the child settle into school and additional information are more likely to be specific or unique to each child, but you can enter a generic statement to get you started for each of these, and then in each child's record you can write the individual comments. Now you'll notice on each of these fields there's a checkbox. You only need to use this checkbox if you want to republish the information from the field to each child's record. So this is handy if you change the generic information, or if you notice a typo in one of the pieces of text or a spelling mistake, you can go back and edit that and then republish that. One thing to be aware of when doing this is that when you check this box and you say yes, it will overwrite the whole block of text in each child's record. Now that's fine for the context because pretty much all the time it will be generic text and you can overwrite that. But if you're doing it for these other text boxes, just be careful, because if you have already written additional information that's unique to any of the children, or if you had entered text for things that might help the child settle into school that is unique for any child, ticking this box will overwrite that text. So just be careful. It's best to push this information out first, and once you've done that and it appears in the text box, then you can go and edit that and enter more text. And that's for that individual child that you're working on. Okay, so we hit Save Next, and that takes us to the Learning Outcomes tab. Now this is where we enter the information for each of the learning outcomes. So when you first arrive at the Identity tab or any of the Learning Outcome tabs, the text field is empty, waiting for your comments about Adam's identity. Now you can write your information in from scratch, just using your memory or your notes, but you can also use the tools supplied within ClassMon. The first one is the Comments button. Now this gives you access to a comment bank, and this is something that you can build yourself through the configuration setting, and there's a separate video on showing you how to do this. Now this is for those that want to load in a generic set of comments for each of the learning outcomes, which can be then used to automate some of the processes of applying the comments. Now we suggest that these are only used as base comments, that you'd apply the comments and then you would go in and edit those comments individually for each child. Now if you are going to use a comment bank, it's important that you do apply the comments first, so you get these comments in first, because if you do write your own comment in and then you choose a comment from the comment bank, it will overwrite that field. So you must use the comment bank first and then move on to the other methods for inputting your comments. The second method is the Summary button. Now because you've made observations throughout the year for Adam's identity, rather than have to search through those for any comments that you've written, you just click the Summary button, and that summarizes all those. That brings in all the observation comments that you've made for Adam's identity, and then you can pick up any of those comments, copy that text, and then paste it into the field. So that's the second way of building your comment. And the third way is the guide text. So if you click the guide button, it actually brings up all the guide information for the EYLFs, for each of the learning elements for identity, because we're working on the identity comment. So you can use that as a checklist to make sure that you're covering the elements or that you're writing comments for the right areas. Or you could actually pick up some of the dot points, copy those, and bring those into your final comment. Okay, so that's how you build your comment. And again, it's important to hit the Save Next button. That will move you to the next tab. If you're ready to write any information in the next tab, go ahead and write it. If not, you can move away to another child and continue writing your comments. So in the end, you'll end up with all your comments written. Move to your last page, add any additional information such as the child's interests or the additional information. You'll notice that the additional information has come from the settings field if you have written any information in there. And an important thing to note is when you do write information in these fields here under settings, you can use the name variable in any of these fields so that it will automatically insert the child's name when you come to their individual record. So you can see here it's inserted Adam's name automatically. And then you can go and write additional comments. Okay, so once you finish, you apply that and the transition statement is saved. At any time now, you can go to your reports, learning, and produce your transition statement for the selected child. If we do a print preview, here we have that child's transition statement. Ready to print. From here you can print to paper or you can generate a PDF file. One other thing to note is on the cover page there is a box here to input the child's image of self or drawing. You just click on this actual icon or photo and it will bring up a browse window to add your image. So the best way of doing that is get the child to draw on a piece of paper, take a digital photo and then just input it via this box. And finally we'll just look at one other method of printing reports. Now this one's important if you want to print multiple children's reports in one file. So this could be very good for backing up things like transition statements. So you can easily select a number of children by checking the checkboxes against their name or selecting all if you want your whole class. Then click on your reports button down in the bottom toolbar. Choose the type of report you want. So we'll select the transition statement and click OK. And it will go through and generate a transition statement for each of those children. Then you can generate a PDF. So we'll just call this TS 2010. I'll call it number 2. And I'll save that. Now that went to My Documents and saved a PDF file. So if I go now to My Documents in Windows Explorer, here it is here. There's the file. If I double click on that, that will open up the PDF file. I'll just zoom out so we can see it all. And here's the PDF file. And if we scroll down, we can see each of the pages. And it's created it for each of the children that I selected.